Who are the Saudis, really? Within the truth movement, broadly defined, Saudi Arabia has become a topic of discussion. Questions have arisen regarding their role in 9/11. They seem to have spent a lot of money trying to influence US politics, and it seems that they paid for Obama's education. People who follow QAnon will be aware of ties to the Clintons and Bushes. And Q even identifies the House of Saud as one of the three sides of the New World Order pyramid, along with the House of Rothschild and George Soros. And I agree with his analysis, whether or not you follow Q. And some people might be tempted to notice that Soros and Rothschild are of the same tribe. But what about the House of Saud? Some people scoff at the idea that one particular ethnic or religious group, depending on how you look at it, is especially involved in the global cabal. People like Alex Jones say that it isn't just this one group, and that it's actually a very diverse coalition behind the satanic cabal. And he and others have pointed to Saudi Arabia as an example to refute the claim that one particular group is behind the global conspiracy. Others attempt to deflect criticism away from this particular group by pointing to the British royal family, or the Jesuits. And I'll deal with both of those in the future. But let's focus on the House of Saud for now. Who are they really? And what are their origins? There's no way I can cover this fully in one video, but I hope to stimulate your interest enough so that you dive in and do your own research. I'm going to read 2 articles and give some commentary on them. I will post links to the original articles. The first article is the Saudi dynasty. Where do they come from and who is their real ancestor? And the second is the Jewish roots of the House of Saud family tree. The Saudi dynasty. Where do they come from and who is their real ancestor? By Muhammad Salam, Part 1. Extracted from saudhouse.com. Research and presentation of Mohammed Sakr, I apologize if I'm mispronouncing his name, who is killed by the Saudi regime for the following findings. Do the Saudi family members belong to the tribe of Anza bin Wa'el, as they allege to be? And I'm just going to apologize now if I mispronounce certain names. I do not speak Arabic. I'm pronouncing it the best I can, kind of based on how I might say these words if they were English words or English names. 2. Is Islam their actual religion? 3. Are they of an Arab origin at all? The following facts will blot out all the allegations of the Saudi family and will refute all the false statements made by those hypocrites who sold their conscience to this family by falsifying and interpolating the real history of the Saudi family. I mean the journalists and historians who, for a financial, temporal reward, have inserted and attached the genealogy of this family to our great prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, alleging that the Saudis are viceroys of our Almighty Allah on the earth. It is quite clear that such a flattery is intended to vindicate and justify the Saudis' crimes and atrocities, so as to firmly stabilize their throne and to prop the pillars of their despotic regime, which is extremely dictatorial and completely rejected by our great Islamic faith. Just in case anyone doesn't realize, I am reading an article. I am not Muslim, but I'm reading it as it's written. Kingship is accursed in our Islamic religion, in the Holy Quran, because it is an imposed authority of one person and his family members to suppress the people and silence any other voice of opposition to the king's despotic and completely dictatorial rules. So kings are denounced in the Holy Quran. In this verse, kings, when they enter a country, despoil it, and make the noblest of its people the meanest. Thus do they behave. Nevertheless, the Saudi family ignores this Quranic verse and alleges falsely that they are the strongest believers in the Holy Quran, while in interim, they issue their strict orders to prohibit such Quranic verses from being recited on the radios or the TVs. At the same time, such verses are strictly forbidden by them to appear written on any journal, because their recitation or printing does affect their seat of majesty. I just want to interject here that I personally do see Islam as a pretty totalitarian kind of system, but it's encouraging to me to see that there are Muslims who interpret it in a non-fundamentalist way. I have a feeling that me and this guy would get along, and we would probably see eye to eye on at least some things. Who are these Saudis? Where are they from? And what is their final goal? The Saudi family members know perfectly well the Muslims all over the world have already known their real Jewish origin. Muslims have now known all their bloody past, which was and still is stuck in the same mire of brutal despotism and atrocity. Presently, they exert their utmost efforts to conceal their Jewish origin by covering themselves with the cloak of the Islamic religion, so as to keep their real Jewish ancestry hidden in the dark, by connecting their family tree with our holy prophet Muhammad. They forget or ignore that Islam does never give any favorable attention to genealogy or family trees. It favors and honors indiscriminately all human beings whose actions and words are commensurate with the doctrines of the Holy Quran, as confirmed by the following Quranic verse. O mankind, we created you from a single pair of a male and female, and made you into nations and tribes, so that you may know each other, not that you may despise each other. Verily the most honored by you, in the sight of Allah, He who is the most righteous of you. Anyone who is iniquitous and blasphemous cannot affiliate him or herself to our great prophet Muhammad, even though he or she may be the closest blood relative to him. Bilal, the Abyssinian slave, who was a faithful Muslim, was much more honored by Islam than Abu Lahab the pagan, who was the real blood uncle of our prophet. In Islam there is no favoritism. Allah sets the degree of comparison in Islam according to the person's piety, and not according to his or her worldly status of affiliation to any dynasty. Who is the real ancestor of the clan of Saud? In the year 851 AH, a group of men from Al-Masalik clan, which was a branch of Anza tribe, formed a caravan for buying cereals, wheat and corn, and other foodstuff from Iraq, and transporting it back to Najd, N-A-J-D, Najd, I don't know. That's the best I can do. The head of that group was a man called Sahmi bin Hathlul. The caravan reached Basra, where the members of the group went to a cereal merchant who was a Jew, called Mordecai bin Ibrahim bin Moshe. During their bargaining with that merchant, the Jew asked them, "Where are you from?" They answered, "From Anza tribe, a clan of Al-Masalik." Upon hearing that name, the Jew started to hug so affectionately each one of them, saying that he himself was also from the clan of Al-Masalik, but he had come to reside in Basra, Iraq, in consequence to a family feud between his father and some members of Anza tribe. After he recounted to them his fabricated narrative, he ordered his servants to load all of the camels with wheat, dates, and taman, a remarkable deed so generous that astonished the Masalik men and aroused their pride to find such an affectionate cousin in Iraq. They believed each word he said, and because he was a rich merchant of the food commodities, which they were badly in need of, they accepted him, even though he was a Jew concealed under the garb of an Arab from Al-Masalik clan. When the caravan was ready to depart, returning to Najd, that Jewish merchant asked them to accept his company, because he intended to go with them to his original homeland. Upon hearing that from him, they wholeheartedly welcomed him with a very cheerful attitude. So that concealed Jew reached Najd with the caravan. In Najd, he started to promulgate a lot of propaganda for himself through his companions, his alleged cousins. a fact which gathered around him a considerable number of new supporters. But unexpectedly, he confronted a campaign of opposition to his views, led by Sheikh Salah Salman Abdullah al-Tamimi, who was a Muslim religious preacher in Al-Qasim. The radius of his preaching area included Najd, Yemen, and Hijaz, a fact which compelled the Jew, the ancestor of the present Saud family, to depart from Al-Qasim to Al-Isa, where he changed his name, Mordecai, to Markan bin Dur-Iya near Al-Qatif, where he started to spread among the inhabitants a fabricated story about the shield of our prophet Muhammad, that it was taken as a booty by an Arab pagan in consequence of the Battle of Uhud between the Arab pagans and the Muslims. That shield, he said, was sold by the Arab pagan to a Jewish clan called Banu Qunayqa, who preserved it as a treasure. He gradually enhanced his position among the Bedouins through such stories, which indicated how the Jewish clans in Arabia were so influential and deserved high esteem. He gained some personal importance among the Bedouins and decided to permanently settle there, at Dur-Iya town, near Al-Qatif, which he decided to be his capital on the Persian Gulf. He aspired to make it his springboard for establishing a Jewish kingdom in Arabia. In order to fulfill his ambitious scheme, he started to approach the desert Arab Bedouins for support of his position, and then gradually he declared himself as their king. At that juncture, Ajaman tribe, together with Banu Khalid tribe, became fully aware of that Jewish cunning plan after they had verified his true identity, and decided to put an end to him. They attacked his town and conquered it, but before arresting him, he had escaped by the skin of his teeth. That Jewish ancestor of the Saudi family, Mordecai, sought shelter in a farm at that time called Al-Malibid Gusaybeh near El Arid, which is called at our present time Al-Riyadh. He requested the owner of that farm to grant him asylum. The farmer was so hospitable that he immediately gave him sanctuary, but no longer than a month had he stayed there, when he assassinated the landlord and all members of his family, pretending that they were killed by an invading band of thieves. Then he pretended that he had bought that real estate from them before that catastrophe happened to them. Accordingly, he had the right to reside there as a landlord. He then gave a new name to that place, Al-Diriyah, the same name as that he had lost. That Jewish ancestor, Mordecai, of the Saudi family, was able to establish a great house called Madafa on the land he usurped from his victims, and gathered around him a group of hypocrites who started to spread out false propaganda for him, that he was a prominent Arab sheikh. He plotted against Sheikh Salah Salam Abdullah al-Tamimi, his original enemy, and caused his assassination in the mosque of the town called Al-Zalafi. After that, he felt satisfied and safe to make Al-Diriyah his permanent home. There he practiced polygamy at a wide scale, and indeed he begat a lot of children, whom he gave pure Arab names. Ever since his descendants grew up in number and power under the same name of Saudi clan, they have followed his steps in practicing underground activities and conspiracies against the Arab nation. They illegally seized rural sectors and farmlands and assassinated every person who tried to oppose their evil plans. They used all kinds of deceit for reaching their goal. They bought the conscience of their dissidents. They offered their women and money to influential people in that area, particularly those who started to write the true biography of that Jewish family. They bribed the writers of history in order to purify their ignominious history and to make their lineage related to the most prominent Arab tribes, such as Rabia, Anza, and Al-Masalik. A conspicuous hypocrite in our era, whose name is Muhammad Amin al-Tamimi director and manager of the contemporary libraries of the Saudi kingdom, made up a genealogical tree for this Jewish family, the Saudis, connecting them to our great prophet Muhammad. For his false work, he received a reward of 35,000 Egyptian pounds from the then Saudi ambassador to Cairo, Egypt, in the year 1362 AH, which translates to 1943 AD. The name of that ambassador is Ibrahim al-Fadl. I just want to insert here briefly that 1943 AD is pretty close to the year that Israel became a nation. So there seems to be a lot of things going on around this time period. As aforementioned, the Jewish ancestor of the Saudi family, Mordecai, practiced polygamy by marrying a lot of Arab women and begot many children. His polygamous practice is, at the present time, being carried out to the letter by his descendants. One of Mordecai's sons, called Al-Marakan, Arabized from the Jewish root Makren, begot a son called Mohammed, then another called Saud, which is the name of the present Saudi dynasty. Descendants of Saud, the present-day Saudi family, started a campaign of assassination of the prominent leaders of the Arab tribes under the pretense that those leaders were apostates, renegating from the Islamic religion and deserting their Quranic doctrines, so they deserved the Saudi condemnation and slaughter. In the history book of the Saudi family, pages 98 to 101, their private family historian declares that the Saudi dynasty considers all people of Najd blasphemous, so their blood must be shed, their properties confiscated, and their females taken as concubines. No Muslim is authentic in his or her belief unless he or she belongs and affiliates to the sect of Muhammad bin Abdul Wahhab, whose origins are also Jewish, from Turkey. His doctrines give authority to the Saudi family to destroy villages with all their inhabitants, males including children, and to sexually assault their women, stab the bellies of the pregnant, and cut off the hands of their children, then burn them. They are further authorized, by such a brutal doctrine, to plunder all the properties of which they call renegades, in other words, those not following their Wahhabi sect. Their hideous Jewish family has in fact done all these kinds of atrocities in the name of their false religious sect, the Wahhabi, which has actually been invented by a Jew, so as to sow the seeds of terror in the hearts of people in towns and villages. This Jewish dynasty has been committing such brutal atrocities ever since 1163 AH. They have named the whole Arabian Peninsula after their family name, Saudi Arabia, as if the whole region is their own personal real estate, and that all other inhabitants are their mere servants or slaves, toiling day and night for the pleasure of their masters, the Saudi family. They are completely holding the natural wealth of the country as their own property. If any poor person from the common people raises his or her voice, complaining against any of the despotic rules of this Jewish dynasty, the dynasty cuts off his or her head in the public square. A princess of theirs once visited Florida, USA. She rented 90 suite rooms in a grand hotel for about $1 million a night. Can any one of her subjects comment about that extravagant event? If he or she does, his or her fate is quite known. Death with the edge of the Saudi sword in the public square. In the 1960s, the Saut al-Arab broadcasting station in Cairo, Egypt, and the Yemen broadcasting station in Sana'a confirmed the Jewish ancestry of the Saudi family. King Faisal al-Saud, at that time, could not deny his family's kindred with the Jews when he declared to the Washington Post on September 17th on September 17, 1969, stating, "We, the Saudi family, are cousins of the Jews. We entirely disagree with any Arab or Muslim authority which shows any antagonism to Jews, but we must live together with them in peace. Our country, Arabia, is the fountainhead from where the first Jew sprang, and his descendants spread out all over the world." That was the declaration of King Faisal al Saud bin Abdul Aziz. Hafez Wabi, the Saudi legal advisor, mentioned in his book entitled The Peninsula of Arabia that King Abdul Aziz Saud, who died in 1953, had said, "Our message, Saudi message, encountered the opposition of all Arab tribes. My grandfather, Saud Awal, once imprisoned a number of the sheiks of Mathir tribe, and when another group of the same tribe came to intercede for the release of the prisoners, Saud Awal gave orders to his men to cut off the heads of all the prisoners. Then he wanted to humiliate the interceders by inviting them to eat from a banquet he prepared from the cooked flesh of his victims, whose cut-off heads he placed on top of the food platters. The interceders became so alarmed and declined to eat the flesh of their relatives, and because of their refusal to eat, he ordered his men to cut off their heads too. That hideous crime was committed by that self-imposed king to innocent people, whose guilt was their opposition to his most cruel and extremely despotic rule." Hafez Wabi states further that King Abdul Aziz al Saud related that bloody true story to the sheiks of the Mathir tribes, who visited him in order to intercede for their prominent leader at the time, Faisal al-Darwish, who was the king's prisoner. He related that story to them in order to prevent them from interceding for the release of their sheik. Otherwise, they would meet the same fate. He killed the sheik and used his blood as an ablution liquid from him just before he stood up for his prayer, after the false sect doctrine of the Wahhabi. The guilt of Faisal Darwish at that time was that he had criticized King Abdul Aziz al Saud when the king signed the document which the English authorities prepared in 1922 as a declaration for giving Palestine to the Jews. His signature was obtained in the conference held in Al-Aqir in 1922. That was and still is the system of this regime of the Jewish family, the Saudi family. All its goals are plundering the wealth of the country, robbing, falsifying, and committing all kinds of atrocity, iniquity, and blasphemy. All are executed in compliance with their self-invented Wahhabi sect, which legalizes the chopping off of heads of their opposing subjects. Let's dive into the second article. Historians have traced that the Sauds belonged to Anza tribe, who were settled in Najd around 1450 AD. It is said that the Sauds were originally Jews and shrewd feudal lords. In the early 1960s, the Saud Al-Arab Broadcasting Station in Cairo, Egypt, and the Yemen Broadcasting Station in Sana'a confirmed the Jewish ancestry of the Saudi royal family. King Faisal, 1906 to 1975, who ruled the kingdom between 1964 and 1975, confirmed Jewish ancestry of Saudi royals. In an interview to Washington Post on September 17, 1969, King Faisal is reported to have said, "We, the Saudi family, are cousins of the Jews. We entirely disagree with any Arab or Muslim authority which shows any antagonism to the Jews, but we must live together with them in peace. Our country, Arabia, is the fountainhead from where the first Jew sprang, and his descendants spread out all over the world." It is claimed that the roots of the Saudi ruling family have also been described in detail in a book written in 1810 by researcher ibn Rushd, he mentioned about an individual, Mordecai bin Abraham bin Moshe al-Dunami, also known as Murkan, a trader from Basra, Iraq, and how he had claimed that he was from Arabian Peninsula, but his father had fled earlier to Basra and changed his name for security reasons. He married a Bedouin woman and had children. One of his sons' name was Saad. Muhammad bin Saud, the son of this Saad, later became the founder of the Saud dynasty in Arabia. It's claimed that when this book surfaced in Saudi Arabia, the Saudi royals hunted for its copies and destroyed them. A copy of this book is claimed to be available in the U.S. Congress Library, and many attempts by academics from various U.S. universities to acquire this book have failed, as this book is placed on a hold status since 1981. Our readers are requested to let us know if they have credible information in this context. There is an official Saudi account of the ancestors of Al-Saud clan. Saudis claim the ancestor of current Saudi royals was Mani ibn Rabia al-Muraidi, who had settled in Diriyah. The ancestry of Mani ibn Rabia is not known, except that he was the descendant of Aniza, or Anza tribe. Mani was invited by a relative named Ibn Dir. Ibn Dir was the ruler of many villages that make up modern-day Riyadh. Ibn Dir gifted Mani 2 small villages where he settled and renamed these villages as Al-Diriyah. The researchers have found out the ancestor of Al-Saud to be Mordecai bin Abraham bin Moshe, a Jew from the Anza tribe who lived in Basra, Iraq, and moved to Najd and settled in Diriyah. The official account of Al-Sauds claimed their ancestor to be Mani ibn Rabia al-Muayyidi from Aniza tribe who settled in Diriyah. Probably both these accounts are referring to the same person who is the ancestor of the Saudi royals. Some people claim that ancestors do not matter in Islam. Once you have accepted Islam, it does not matter who were your ancestors. It is true that ancestry has no significance in Islam as long as you have accepted Islam in a true sense. If someone uses deception and fools Muslims about his acceptance of Islam, it means he is still the adherent of the religion of his ancestors. Look at the systematic destruction of Islam in the hands of the Saudi royals, how they have destroyed all Islamic memorials in the name of Islam, and how they are terrorizing the Muslim world and killing Muslims everywhere. This is a clear evidence that Wahhabism is a Jewish ploy with which they are plundering the Muslim world and fooling 1.5 billion Muslims around the globe. It is reported that the Saudi royal family trust Israeli and U.S. mercenaries as their personal bodyguards. U.S. and Israeli mercenary security personnel working for private contractors are allegedly used by the Saudi royal family to guard Saud family princelings. This Praetorian Guard uses balaclava, face cover, and other disguises during security operations, which allows for anonymity. The Saudi royals' Jewish ancestry is also confirmed from the fact that they have destroyed and eliminated the entire Islamic heritage and established Salafism, a new religion, in the Arabian Peninsula. Muhammad ibn Abd al-Wahhab, 1703 to 1799, born in Uyayna in Najd, belonged to Banu Tamim tribe. Some historians have claimed that Muhammad ibn Abd al-Wahhab grandparents belonged to Donma Jewish community. This was claimed to have been disclosed in intelligence reports of the Iraqi government, which became public after U.S. occupation of Iraq. Ibn Abd al-Wahhab studied in his childhood from his father. Later, he spent some time in Basra, southern Iraq, from where he traveled to Makkah and Medina. I think that's probably Mecca and Medina. Some of this is written a little bit funny. All historians agree that his new thinking of rebellion against Islam was developed when he was in Basra. By the time he returned to his native town of, I don't know how to pronounce that properly, Uyayna, in 1740, he had completely transformed into a rebel against Islam. He started propagating his new ideology, claiming that the entire population of Muslims of the Arabian Peninsula and that of the world was mushrikeen, and that what he was preaching was real Islam. Memoirs of Mr. Hemfer, the British Spy to the Middle East, is a book that was published in series, episodes, in Spiegel, the German paper, and later in a prominent French paper. It's reported that a Lebanese doctor translated the book into Arabic. Waqf Ikhlas Publications. God, I f***ing hate Arabic words. Translated it into English under the title Confessions of a British Spy and British Enmity Against Islam. Hemfer's confessions were mentioned in a research study titled The Emergence of Al-Wahhabiyya Movement and Its Historical Roots by Colonel Al-Amri Saeed Mahmoud Najm, General Military Intelligence Directorate, Government of Iraq. This research study was discovered by U.S. forces in May 2003 after their capture of Iraq. David Livingstone, a famous Canadian author, wrote an article titled The House of Saud, No More Islamic Than Billy Graham, in which he has described about British spy Hemfer and his covert operations in Arabian Peninsula. A similar work exposing the Wahhabi terror was documented by the well-known Mufti of Mecca, Sheikh Ahmad Zaini Dahlan, in his famous book titled Fitnatul Wahhabiyya. The book narrates the actions of a covert British agent, Hemfer, who was sent to Turkey, the then head of the Ottoman Empire, in 1710, to find ways and means to cause dissension, riots, and dismantling of the Khilafah in Istanbul, Turkey. At the beginning of his account, Hemfer stated that he went to Istanbul, embraced Islam, learned the Holy Quran, and pretended to be a very pious Muslim. During this time, Hemfer became fully aware of the difference between Sunnis and Shiites. Hemfer was later sent to Basra, Iraq, with the following instructions detailed on page 20 of this book. Quote, Your duty this time is to diagnose the Shia-Sunni controversies well and to report to the ministry. The more successful you are in aggravating the differences among Muslims, the greater will be your service to England. We, the English people, have to make mischief and arouse schism in all our colonies in order that we may live in welfare and luxury. Only by means of such instigations will we be able to demolish the Ottoman Empire. Otherwise, how could a nation with a small population bring another nation with a greater population under its sway? Look for the mouth of the chasm with all your might, and get in as soon as you find it. You should know that the Ottoman and Iranian empires have reached the nadir of their lives. Therefore, your first duty is to instigate the people against the administration. History has shown that the source of all sorts of revolutions is public rebellions. When the unity of Muslims is broken and the common sympathy among them is impaired, their forces will be dissolved, and thus we shall easily destroy them. Unquote. While staying in Basra, Hemfer joined a carpenter's shop where he worked as a cover. He further stated in his book on page 23 as follows, quote, From time to time, a young man would call at our carpenter's shop. His attire was that of a student doing scientific research, and he understood Arabic, Persian, and Turkish. His name was Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, and he was from Najd, eastern Arabia. This guy was a rude and nervous person. While abusing the Ottoman government, he would never speak ill of the Iranian government. The common ground which made him and the shop owner, Abdur Ridia, so friendly was that both were inimical toward the Khalifa in Istanbul." Unquote. On page 20 of this book, Hempher described the foundation of deceit as follows, quote, "Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab and I decided to make a new interpretation of the Quran to reflect only our points of view, and would be entirely contrary to the explanations made by the Sahaba, Imams. We started reading the Quran and talking on its verses. The purpose was to mislead Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab. After all, he was trying to present himself as a revolutionist, and would therefore accept my views and ideas with pleasure." Unquote. While talking about Mu'tah, Hempher narrates as follows, quote, "I sensed that Muhammad of Najd desired a woman, as he was single. I told him, 'Come on, let us each get a woman by Mu'tah. We will have great fun with them.' He accepted with a nod. This was a great opportunity for me, so I promised to find a woman for him to enjoy. My aim was to allay the timidity he had about people. He asked me to keep it a secret between us, and that even the woman should not know his name. I hurriedly went to one of the prostitutes who were sent by the Ministry of Colonies with the task of seducing the Muslim youth. The ministry devised a subtle scheme for Muhammad of Najd, as detailed below. He is to declare all Muslims as disbelievers and announce that it is halal to kill them, to seize their property, to violate their chastity, to make their men slaves and their women concubines, and to sell them at slave markets. He is to strive to dissuade Muslims from obeying the Khalifa. He is to provoke them to revolt against him. He is to prepare armies for this purpose. He is to exploit every opportunity to spread the conviction that it is necessary to fight against the notables of Hejaz and bring disgrace on them. He is to allege that the mausoleums, domes, and sacred places in Muslim countries are idols and polytheistic milus, and must therefore be demolished. He is to do his best to produce occasions for insulting Prophet Muhammad, his Sahaba, and all prominent scholars. He is to do his utmost to encourage insurrections, oppressions, and anarchy in Muslim countries. He is to try to publish a copy of the Quran, interpolated with additions and excisions, as is the case with ahadith. After explaining this scheme, the secretary added, "Do not panic at this huge program, for our duty is to sow the seeds for annihilating Islam. There will come generations to complete this job. Muhammad of Najd promised me that he would implement all the points of this scheme, and added, 'For the time being, I can execute them partly.'" A couple of years later, the Ministry of Commonwealth managed to cajole Mohammed bin Saud into joining our team. They sent me a messenger to inform about this and to establish a mutual affection and cooperation between the two Mohammeds. For earning Muslims' hearts and trust, we exploited Muhammad of Najd religiously, and Muhammad bin Saud politically. It is a historical fact that states based on religion have lived longer and have been more powerful and more imposing. Thus we continuously became more and more powerful. We made Daria the center of our subversive operations, and we named our new religion the Wahhabi religion." Unquote. It is reported that initially Ibn Abdul Wahhab managed to convert Uyayna's town in charge Uthman ibn Muammar into his new religion, and with his support started implementing his new ideology in the town by force. The first evil act committed by Ibn Abd al-Wahhab was by conspiring with Ibn Mu'ammar one night. He destroyed the dome and pious grave of Hadrat Zaid ibn al-Khattab, who is the Sahabi of Prophet Muhammad and brother of Hadrat Umar ibn al-Khattab, the second caliph of Islam. God, I wish they just had names like Mike and James and stuff like that. Destruction of the dome and his anti-Islam activities, in collusion with the local town, drew the attention of Sulaiman ibn Mahmud of Bani Khalid, the tribal chief of al-Hassan, who was a good Muslim. He ordered the arrest of Ibn Abd al-Wahhab. The news reached Ibn Abd al-Wahhab in time, and he fled from Uyayna. I am fucking sick of these fucking Arabic names. God damn. Muhammad ibn Saud was a shrewd tribal lord of neighboring Diriyah, Najd, who cared more about money, power, and women, as had been the case with most of the feudal lords in medieval times. He gave protection to Ibn Abd al-Wahhab Dikadapadapal on the instruction of the British agents, and quickly envisioned the possibility of forming a state in the Arabian Peninsula based on Wahhabism, the new religious theory preached by Ibn Abd al-Wahhab. Thus the first Saudi state came into being in the year 1744 AD. When Ibn Abd al-Wahhab and Muhammad ibn Saud formed an alliance and hatched a political conspiracy to establish a state based on Wahhabism, away from Islam. To cement the alliance further, Ibn Saud's sister was married to Ibn Abd al-Wahhab. As per the terms of alliance, Ibn Abd al-Wahhab became de facto minister for religious affairs, whose job was to convert people into the new religion and create religious fanaticism in masses. The plan was to use newly converted religious fanatics to expand the Saud's territory and eventually form a large Saudi state in the Arabian Peninsula. The following 183 years, between 1744 and 1927, the Sauds fought wars with all Muslim rulers of the Arabian Peninsula and were finally successful in wiping out Islam and Muslims from the Arabian Peninsula in 1927, when Abdul Aziz declared himself as king of the newly formed state of Saudi Arabia. The first Saudi state lasted between 1744 and 1818, when their last ruler, Abdullah bin Saud, was executed by the Ottomans. The second Saudi state was established in 1824 and lasted until 1890 in Central Arabia, when its last ruler, Abdur Rahman ibn Faisal ibn Turki, was defeated by al-Rashids. Abdul Aziz bin Abdur Rahman al-Saud, 1873 to 1953, was the founding ruler of the third Saudi state in Najd. He had fled and took refuge in Kuwait in 1890, along with his father, Abdur Rahman, and entire family, when the second Saudi state was defeated by al-Rashids. In 1901, Abdul Aziz returned to Najd and, with the help of Kuwaitis, recaptured Riyadh from al-Rashids. Later on, with the help of the British government, he established his hold on the entire Arabian Peninsula over a period of 27 years. The following is the gist of the capture of states in Arabia by British-trained Wahhabi army. On November 2, 1921, Ibn Saud captured Hale, ending the ancient dynasty of the Rashids. In July 1922, Ibn Saud overran Jauf and ended the ancient Shalan dynasty. On August 24, 1924, the Wahhabis attacked Taif in Hijaz and overran it on September 5th of the same year. On October 13th, 1924, Ibn Saud took Makkah. Sharif Hussein and his son Ali were forced to flee. This is how Saudi Arabia usurped the holy city, an act which remains to this day deeply resented by 1.5 billion Muslims of the world. Without British help, Ibn Saud would not have been able to subdue Mecca. The British oligarchical structure had long expressed hatred of the Prophet Muhammad, and no doubt took great satisfaction in the Saudi victory. Between January and June of 1925, the Wahhabis laid siege to the city-state of Jeddah and captured it. On December 5, 1925, Medina surrendered to Ibn Saud, and on December 19th, Sharif Ali, son of Hussein, was forced to abdicate. On January 8, 1926, Ibn Saud, King Abdul Aziz, was proclaimed King of the Hijaz and Sultan of Nejd. On May 20th of 1927, Abdul Aziz signed a treaty with Great Britain, which recognized the complete independence of all territories held by the Wahhabis, and allowed them to become known as Saudi Arabia. These 27 years saw several 100,000 Muslims killed. All traces of traditional Islam erased, and over 60,000 sacred graves of Sahaba, members of Prophet's family, destroyed, and their pious bodies disposed of mysteriously by Abdul Aziz's forces. In a nutshell, Islam was completely wiped out. Muslims totally vanished, and Islamic Arabia was renamed as Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. The Saudis didn't stop at that. They gradually changed ahadith books, misinterpreted Quranic verses, and started massive Salafi Dawah campaign to legitimize their rule in the Arabian Peninsula. People say that the current plight of Muslims and their innumerable divisions in the world is mainly because of Salafi Dawah carried out by the kingdom spending billions of petrodollars wealth. The actual number of princes and princesses King Abdulaziz fathered are not known. Some historians say he fathered 37 or 40 princes and around an equal number of princesses, while some others say he fathered more than 100 children. Among the women who gave birth to his children, 22 have been identified by historians, who say that the number could be much higher than that. Historians have also mentioned that the personal life of the king was full of vice, with women, wine, and wealth. He had an unknown number of beautiful young women in his harem, and a large nursery of princes and princesses born to these women. The king consolidated his authority ruthlessly, killing every Muslim who did not convert to Salafism, and destroying the entire Islamic heritage kept intact for 1,300 years by successive Muslim governments. His forces wiped out the entire geography of Siratun Nabi. As an alternative to Islamic heritage, the National Museum at Riyadh built an elaborate pre-Islamic art rock helicoptered from Najd sands. In addition, many plush museum complexes such as Dar al-Malik Abdul Aziz, dedicated to the founding fathers of the Saudi kingdom, have now risen everywhere in the kingdom. The Saudis' goal is to erect gleaming, high-tech relics commemorating King Abdul Aziz and the ancestors of the Saudi royal family. The other important goal of the Saud family is to eliminate the last remaining trace of Islam from Arabia. In other words, the green dome of the Prophet Muhammad, along with his pious grave. A pamphlet published in 2007 by the Ministry of Islamic Affairs, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and endorsed by their Grand Mufti reads, "The green dome shall be demolished, and the 3 graves flattened in the Prophet's mosque. The demolition of the green dome has already been checked off the to-do list. Even the pious body of Prophet Muhammad along with the pious bodies of his two prominent companions, is now slated to disappear under the rubble and dust. We pray for Allah's help to stop the Saudis from eliminating Islam and humiliating Prophet Muhammad in this manner. We hope followers of Salafism in this world will think about these undeniable facts and come back to the straight path of Islam for their own good in this life and in the hereafter. In the late 1960s, King Faisal issued a decree that every inch of the country that was not officially registered to a private individual belonged to the Saudi royal family. Thus, the entire country is treated as private property of the royal family. The king distributed much of the land to royal family members. Princes sold some of the land back to the state, and some to the public, but most they kept for themselves. Inside major cities or out in the remote desert, the country's vast landmass remains private property of the princes, now numbering over 15,000. They also treat Saudi oil revenues as their private wealth. Every prince is entitled to a monthly salary starting the date of his birth. The closer the relation to late King Abdul Aziz, the higher is the salary. Like immediate descendants of the late King Abdul Aziz receive a 7-digit salary, millions, each month. The princes are paid separate salary for each of their official positions. Like Prince Sultan bin Abdul Aziz, reportedly holds over 60 separate positions in addition to chairing dozens of committees, entitling him to separate salaries for every position. Governors are entitled to a special additional payment of 1 billion annually to be used at their discretion. In addition, every prince is entitled to a luxurious private palace or money to build the palace of his choice, as well as cash from birth to buy expensive cars and other luxuries. Literally everything is supplied to the prince free from the state, like electricity, water, medical, security, education, etc. All state developmental contracts are essentially awarded to the companies owned by the princes. Similarly, their business establishments and other incomes are free from state control and taxes. Anything coming into Saudi Arabia under the name of a prince, via air or sea, is not checked by any government agency. Not many people know that over 90% of Saudi oil comes from 6 oil fields discovered before 1970s. Experts argue that these oil fields are now well past their prime. Ghawar oil field is the supergiant and has provided 55 to 60% of Saudi oil over the past 5 decades. According to experts like Matthew Simmons, Ghawar is past its peak already and likely to enter into a major decline. Rude Awakening comments, even the world's largest oil producer may be running low on cheap oil. Matthew Simmons, chairman of Simmons & Company International, an investment bank specializing in the oil industry, says that the Saudi oil fields are aging much faster. According to Simmons, the Saudis need to strip water out of nearly every well, and this is a sign that the Saudi oil fields are aging much faster than the industry has planned for. Once Saudi oil reserves get more noticeably depleted, the Saudi royal family members have their prearranged asylum in the United States.